Hello, everyone. Welcome to Faith and Fellowship. We're three guys based in Utah. I'm Kirk.
I'm Joel.
And I'm Lyric.
And the goal of our show is to share stories and beliefs from different people local to our area.
Our mission is to bring civil discourse and allow people who hold different faiths a platform to tell us what they believe.
The show's model consists of an interview episode and a follow-up response episode where we'll discuss the topics that were brought up with our guests in the initial interview and give our take from a biblical standpoint.
Full disclaimer, not all comments and opinions expressed by our guests represent our own opinions. Thank you guys for listening and enjoy this episode.
Welcome to Faith and Fellowship, a podcast produced by Art City Church. I am Pastor Kirk here with
The brunt of all the jokes from Pastor Kirk, Lyric, gets all the flack. How's it so rough here on the show?
That is not true. Everything that is said about Lyric is he deserves it. If anything, we have mercy and don't give you what you deserve.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
I'm sure Joel would agree with that.
And Joel sounds like a girl. No, that is we have a guest.
I'm not disagreeing with the
Oh my! That wasn't related to my voice at all. That was just a statement.
We'll have to edit that out. No, he'll get it. He'll probably include it.
Why do we get to edit out when you mess up? But if I mess up, it stays in there and the episode rolls out with it.
Because we're raw, right, Dad?
We're going to stay raw. We're not going to edit out. We're going to do it. We're just going to say it. We're going to roll with it. But we have also in the studio, because Joel is not able to be in the studio with us or via remotely via Zoom, we have my oldest daughter, Lana Shaw.
Hello.
So joining us today. Well, we want to have a follow-up episode regarding the last two episodes, which was with Father Justin, who is part of the Orthodox Church. And the particular one, he is the priest, pastor. Even want to talk about that. We'll talk a little bit about that. But Father Justin is part of the Orthodox Church here in Payson, and it's just so intriguing. And I know, honestly, one thing we're learning about these podcasts, and maybe it's going to come with some experience, but we do want the guest to be able to speak, and we all, I think, decided that we could have said a lot more and asked a lot more questions, and we just didn't get to everything. And then we had, two pretty long episodes that we recorded with him. But we just want to have a follow-up episode because we're not Orthodox. We're not part of the Orthodox Church. And so we want to go back and talk a little bit about what it was that he said the Orthodox Church was. And I'm probably going to get into this episode some of why we are not. So, when it starts with what the Orthodox Church was or is, it is what they believe I don't think he didn't use the word only church.
No, original.
But the original church kind of leans toward that, right?
Right.
If you're the original, then everything else would be a counterfeit. Isn't that right?
Pretty much. Yeah.
So that in itself is a pretty that's a pretty bold statement, and to say that we're the original church. Now, I hope that one of the things this podcast is, it's educational. It will hopefully lead us to do more research. And I do think there were some things that Father Justin said that went a little too far. That I would not agree on, and we'll touch on those. But the idea that the church, if we just go back and look at it, okay, we have biblical record of the apostles, Paul, Peter, and we have the history of the book of Acts, and that the church spread. And one particular place was Antioch, and that is found in the book of Acts. Where they were actually called Christians first in Antioch. And Antioch's also famous for Peter going up and really the first Gentile prominent church. Well, if I'm not mistaken, and I'm asking this question for clarification, we took some notes that we're looking back on right now. I believe Father Justin said that is where the Orthodox Church founded or came from. Did you guys get that?
Like he said that he can on paper draw it back all the priests to Peter. Isn't that what he said?
Right. Well, yeah. So, and once again, Justin, if you listen to this, thank you so much for coming on. It was awesome having you on. We, full thing is we do our perspective on the topics talked about with our guests. So that's what we're doing here. What he was saying, and, you can go back and listen to episode 1 and 2, because I don't want to misrepresent him here, because I'm not a voice recorder, so I don't memorize everything. But basically, the priest that ordained him was ordained by somebody from Antioch, and that goes all the way back to Peter.
Yeah.
And that's almost the same claim the Catholic Church, the Roman Catholic Church, right, makes, is that the Pope, his authority comes, and you can trace his lineage all the way back to Peter.
Who was the first Pope? Right.
Who they would say is the first Pope, where in Justin's case, to my knowledge, the Orthodox Church doesn't accept the Pope or accept one leader over the church, but it was kind of saying the same thing. That, the guy who ordained him was ordained by somebody, and that lineage stretches all the way back to Peter.
Right.
Yeah.
So, and it sounds good.
Right.
Because, and I think that's one of the things that Justin brought up, was that made orthodoxy attractive to him, was that he, when he understood that the church had not been broken, that there had been a consistent...
There wasn't a great apostasy.
Right. And we don't agree that there was a great apostasy. Mm-hmm. But to go on the other side of it and say that...
It never broke off into anything else.
Or that there was no error.
Yeah.
Then that, to me, if you go back and you read, and we can do this, and this could be a sidetrack to maybe another podcast, but if you go back and you read the patristics, there's some weird stuff going on. There's some stuff going on with the church fathers, the apostolic fathers, that, I just was not hashed out until later on. For example, like Trinitarian doctrine. There are some patristics that you read, you'll find Trinitarian ideas without there being the name Trinity, which is not found in the Bible. But then also that needed to be worked out with some of the councils that took place. I don't know if per se that holds water. Which is what leads us to one of the things that we were talking about that we mentioned to him was, you asked him a question, Lyric, of what came first, or what has the authority? Is it the Bible or is it the church?
I think my question was, does the Orthodox Church teach that the Bible's infallible? Mm-hmm. Is the Bible without errors? And his answer... I've heard this answer before with Orthodox doctrine, that the church brought the Bible, therefore the church holds the authority when it comes to interpreting the Bible, right? So he did say the Bible is inspired word of God. We would say, yes, we agree with that. Is the Bible the overall authority? Is that what your church is based off of? Is the Bible holds the ultimate authority, or is it tradition and the church that holds the ultimate authority? That question didn't get asked. It was a little bit touched up on, but that's a question I'd like to ask, because I think that's a really essential question to know. Where's your authority coming from?
Yeah, and I would actually say I think his answer would be probably what mine is, but it could be a different degree.
Yeah.
And I would answer that question by saying both. And the reason... I would say that is God, it's hard to separate the Bible
from the church.
And God never meant for us to do theology in a bubble. In other words, let's just take you, for example. You came to faith, around a year ago. Sometimes when you started professing that, you came to faith in Jesus Christ. Well, as you're picking up the Bible and you're reading it, maybe for the first time in some books, God never meant for you to just pick up the Bible and start reading it and saying, you know what, I'm going to start figuring out what this is, but because we've got 2,000 years of that happening.
Right.
And so we would be mistaken if we think that we can't learn from the church, meaning the Apostolic Fathers, the Council of Nicaea, the Catholic Church like Thomas Aquinas. Then the Reformers come along, Calvin, Luther, Zwingli,
Wesley.
You've got Wesley. You got American theologians today, the Puritans. It would be a mistake to pick up the Bible and never read from those people.
Yeah.
You're going to miss out on a lot. And what they say is that if you don't know your history, you are, you're doomed to repeat it. You may start down the rabbit hole of some misunderstanding that was cleared up by the church, right? Now, the other side of that is, and this is why I prefaced it by saying I think there would be different degrees, is I don't think I would put as much emphasis as the Orthodox Church would put on tradition or the church, as much as like the Catholic would say. In other words, we're going to do it this way because the church did it, and we're going to make that dogma. We're going to make that doctrine, right?
Right. This is the hill we're going to die on, kind of thing.
We look at things from a biblical standpoint and say, okay, we need the church to understand the Bible. It's necessary. But being Baptistic, we bring alongside of it saying we can know the Bible ourselves. We can read it and understand it. And so I think there's a combination there that I think degree-wise we would differ from the Orthodox. They are a lot more traditional with the liturgical worship. You mentioned something we didn't mention to him about, and if it would have been combative or not, I don't think it would have. I just don't think we didn't get time. But the idea of the worshiping of or honoring of Mary or the saints, and even
the veneration of saints. Yeah.
Even the church itself is named after a saint.
Yeah.
So they're honoring that in that way, and that would be something that for us, would be different.
Well, and that's been a key difference with Protestant, branches of Protestantism and the Orthodox forever. I mean, that's been a debate that's been going on since the dawn of time, right? We don't use saints. We don't put saints on this higher pedestal, right? To us, it's Jesus is the only one we're praying to. And once again, we don't want to misrepresent him, because we didn't get to ask that question on how do you view saints? How are the saints being worshiped? How does that work? Right? What is your take? So I don't want to personally touch too much on that, because I don't exactly know what he believes on that portion.
Say, at home when he studies the Bible, with his kids and stuff, didn't he say that he reads the Bible, but also what was it? The stories of the saints, or
right?
Something like that.
Which, I mean, we read stories of,
absolutely.
People in the church who have done great things. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Right. And we can inspire to want to, bring the word of God to parts of the world like they did, or, look up to them in the way of, hey, right? Like you were bringing the Christian faith. You were evangelizing for the Christian faith. Sure. But I don't believe you have any importance, and you're a man like I am at the end of the day.
Right. I do think one of the things we can learn from the Orthodox Church is, we just touched on it a little bit, but just to go a little further, we need to be able to learn from church history. We need to both appreciate it, we need to know it, and we can learn from it sometimes what not to do. But to say that there is no importance whatsoever. Like I've talked to people before that say, I don't need to know any of that. I just need the Bible. And all I need to do is be able to read the Bible. And that's all I want to do is just teach the Bible. And as much as we are Bible people at Art City Church, and that's what we do, that's a false statement.
Yeah, and I'm not
It's
discounting
dangerous.
church history for sure, right? We looked at church history to see, different theories, different doctrinal type things. I'm not discounting that. Go ahead with what you're saying.
No, I'm just saying, I feel like if we're trying to debrief from what we learned from Father Justin, that's one of the things that I think I'm not saying if we do that, we're going to end up finding out. And this would be something to follow up on.
Yeah.
Is to actually do the work. And that's why I asked him who's writing on the Orthodox Church today to go back and support the claims, because church history is a messy history. And you always have to ask the question, especially in our time, what is truth when it comes to history? Because there's so much revisionary history. History is being revised, or all of it's not being taught.
Right.
Or what is the sources?
Exactly.
Right. So you have to ask those questions with church history too, but that's the work that has to be done. And I'm not saying if we do that, we're going to go back and find what he said he found, which is we have the Orthodox Church that never swayed one way or the other, period.
Yeah.
But what I do think we will find is a deeper, richer understanding that it may be sloppy, and it's sloppy because we are sinful men and women. And God, even in the Bible, used broken men and women to preserve the seed in Israel, right? Or preserve Israel for the perfect one, Jesus, to come. And even after Jesus, we saw fallen men and women, right? God's doing his work in spite of fallen men and women. And you're going to see that in church history. It may be sloppy, but yet we see a complete understanding of what Jesus said was going to happen. And he referenced this, Father Justice did, when it came to the Great Commission: go into all the world and make disciples of every creature. And church history shows us how that happened, even though it may be sloppy and there's a bunch of adversaries, a bunch of opposition.
Because it's God's perfect plan, not our plan, not the church's plan. It's his plan, and that's why he uses broken people.
Yeah.
Amen.
But it's a lot of heartache. It's a lot of headache. It's a lot of apostasy. There's a lot of false teaching.
Yeah.
The Reformation happened for a reason. And I'm curious to go back and look exactly where was the Orthodox Church
during the time of the
time of the Reformation,
I mean,
right?
Look, I'm not a church historian. There's better sources out there if you want to learn more about church history than Lyric here on the Fellowship podcast. But to my knowledge, the Reformation mostly seemed to have to deal with the Catholic Church, right? The Roman Catholic Church.
Absolutely.
And that's a really interesting point you bring up, is where was the Orthodox Church in all of this?
Right.
Because you don't hear about Protestants reforming against the Orthodox Church, right?
Well, and Justin hinted toward it, but he said that they seem to be doing their thing quietly the background.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, first of all, I'm not a church historian either. Matter of fact, I think, and this is a shout out, he's not listening to our podcast, but we could get Ed on.
Yeah.
I'm thinking Gavin Ortlund. If somebody's doing some really important work when it comes to church history, Gavin Ortlund is a resource. And so if you're listening to our podcast, go listen to Gavin Ortlund. He has his own podcast. It's called Truth United. But I think we should try to get Gavin on and to answer this particular question regarding the Orthodox Church in the midst of the the Reformation. But that would be a question to be said. But I would even say beyond that, if the answer is they were just quietly doing their work in the background, if the Catholic Church is running out and with all of the falseness and all the error that Luther spoke against, wouldn't it, in and of itself, shouldn't it be said that they should have said something? Or maybe they did and we don't know.
Yeah, and I think there's a difference, right? Like the Orthodox Church claiming to be the original the Catholic Church, very similar to my knowledge and its nature to the Orthodox Church, they have the Great Schism, right? The Great Split. Then from the Catholic Church, you have the Protestant Reformation that is trying to reform the Catholic Church to what biblical Christianity is, right? So, I mean, maybe they would say, you know, we did say something, we split away from them, or something to that nature, right?
And then you've got those radical Baptists that say, we're not Protestants. We've been doing our own thing. We were just getting slaughtered and trying to stand up against this Catholic Church. So there's a lot of ways.
Wait, the Baptists are saying this?
Oh, yeah.
What?
There are people that claim to be part of like the Anabaptist and different people who were... and there are great books out there that talk about what was going on. One of them is called "The Reformers and Their Stepchildren," and I don't have the author, but I do have that book, and it's interesting. Church history, and I think that's what makes it so daunting. Is church history is so wide. It's so much to take in.
Thousands and thousands of years of history.
And territories being covered. Europe.
Right.
You know, the Middle East.
At a really fast pace.
So you have to really... It just takes time.
Well, and I think I respect Father Justin a lot in the way that even though we're different, right? Both us and him, we're wanting to know the truth, right? We're wanting to search. We're intrigued by church history. We want to find truth in church history, where a lot of groups will just say, hey, I have all the answer. You know, do you get what I'm kind of saying here?
Right, yeah.
I think it's a really good step that we're both looking to church history, wanting to know, because Father Justin made a point to make his thoughts clear on this. We believe there's an absolute truth. There is a false and a truth, right? What is that absolute truth? We would say it's Jesus. I believe he would say the same. Mm-hmm. But we want to know, and I think that's a really good step, right?
Right. Yeah. Yeah, and I agree with that. I think we would say, I have no problem saying that the greatest revelation of God and truth is Jesus Christ.
Absolutely.
And everything that we have in the Bible points us to that reality. And that's something that he said that I even think we as here at Art City Church need to put more emphasis on is you understand that the Bible itself is not meant to be worshiped. The Bible points you to the person you're to worship, which is Jesus.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Now, he said that climaxed in the Eucharist, which I did a little bit of research. I believe the Orthodox Church is like the Catholic Church in the fact that they believe in the transubstantiation, meaning that the bread literally becomes the body of Jesus.
Do some Lutherans believe that too? Or some Presbyterians?
Most Lutherans, if my understanding, there was the big battle between the Reformers are we bringing this over? And I think Luther wanted to keep it transubstantiation.
I believe so.
But then you had Calvin, who was more like a consubstantiation, meaning literally, not to confuse everybody, it's like instead of it literally becoming the body and blood of Jesus, it spiritually became the body and blood of Jesus. Mm-hmm. And then you had people like Zwingli, who more or less believed like what we would believe, and some of this is nuance, right? That it's just in memory of. So nothing happens to the body. Symbol. Right. It's a symbolic thing that points us to the body. But see, the way he was speaking of, and this would have been maybe a follow-up question we'll have when we're at Strap Tank with him eating a steak or something. But, do you really believe that? Is it the literal substance? And this is where they get it. Like we need Christ like we need food. And you're coming here today and you're feasting on Jesus. And so we're hearing the word, the liturgical worship, everything is to get our thoughts to where it needs to be. And then you consume the Eucharist, the meal, and that's Jesus himself, and that feeds your soul. Well, I've always looked at it as it's kind of nuancy in the fact that, okay, if you're a transubstantiation, unless you cut somebody's belly open after they eat it and say, well, it did turn into flesh and blood, how are you going to prove that happens? And in consubstantiation, it's more of a spiritualness. That's kind of nuancy. And who says that even though we're doing it as a symbolic way, that we're not being fed, our spirit's not being fed, because it's all supposed to point us to Jesus.
Right.
Does that make sense?
And I don't want to say the word minor with disrespect to the topic, but, you know, there's fundamental doctrine that makes a Christian. And then you have minute things that are going to make us differ and have a difference on interpretation and perception. But at the end of the day, right, from what I gathered from what he said today, we believe in the same nature of who Christ is. Who is Christ, right? Which I think is key above all else.
I agree. So
that and the who is Christ, and then how is the nature you are saved.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, because what we're talking about, the technical term would be like theological triage.
Right.
Right.
Which one are we going to, what hills are we going to die on here?
Right. And I'm going to be honest with you. I enjoyed the podcast. I enjoyed fellowshipping with him when he was in studio, and I picked up a sense of the fact that the Spirit dwells in him. I think he picked that up with us. Mm-hmm. You know, I think he enjoyed his time, even though he told us that he had to, you know, leave at a certain time. He lingered.
Yeah.
You know, he lingered and kept talking about
lyric,
it.
But no, I'm joking.
Yeah, everybody lingers because
that's true. I just have that thing about me. Everybody wants to linger by, loiter.
So attractive, Lyric. We just can't get away.
See, now you're taking it to a level of. Joel's the one that usually lets me know how attractive I am. I
have to pick up the slack since Joel's not part of the podcast.
Oh,
you're just so attractive, Lyric. Nobody can get away from you. Everybody wants to be with you.
And then I come on the show and get humbled.
And before we continue, we need a word from our sponsor. So we have a sponsor this week, and it is a new business that just started this week. And we're going to have our sponsor talk about the new business.
No, we're not.
Lana, why don't you go ahead and talk about the new business?
This is not a sponsor for the podcast.
She is an entrepreneur.
Oh my goodness.
So this is an official sponsor right here.
This is not an
official sponsor of the podcast is the business.
No.
What do you do?
Your business called No?
It's a band.
Okay, it's a band.
It's called Celtic Folk, and it's not a sponsor.
Okay, so we're actually sponsoring
so you don't like
band.
the podcast? You don't want to sponsor the podcast? Did you hear that?
Now
She doesn't want
words.
This is.
Oh my goodness.
Wow. So I think
we're going to have a rebuttal just to her.
See,
yeah.
Okay. But what are you doing for Celtic Folk? How are you sponsoring us besides
we're giving you a shout out on this podcast that has at least 3 followers.
At least 3.
I mean, we've got people following this.
3 and growing.
If you
we love all 4 of our followers.
If you want some great Celtic music at a wedding,
discounted rate,
or a party, reach out to Celtic Folk. Lana Marie.
She's
Shaw.
Seriously, and I'm not kidding here. I mean, I've seen better, but she's seriously good, and I highly recommend her.
You've seen better?
Did you just insult her and compliment her in the same sentence? Wow.
Minute issues. Not.
All right. Now that we've got the sponsorship out of the way, back to the content.
The real things that matter, Kirk.
I absolutely agree with you. And I think it's a good point, especially where we are. Again, we are in a county, Utah County, which, again, you talked about statistics, and they do get fudged. And
77% of statistics are made up on the spot.
Right, and I'm making one up now. Actually, I've read this, but from what I hear, 89.9% of Utah County identifies as LDS. Okay. Yeah. Maybe it's a little more, maybe it's a little less, but
how many are actual active going to church members in that stat? Who knows, right?
But I think we can all agree that that's close, right? We all live here. We've lived here long enough to know every person you talk to is most likely part of the LDS church. Well, if that being the case, and we do love our LDS friends,
some of the nicest people you will ever meet.
Absolutely.
Great people.
100%.
But there's some serious differences that we would say fall into that hill that we're going to die on,
Right.
doctrine. When it comes to the Greek Orthodox Church and Father Justin, there's a lot of those hill, that primary doctrine that we do agree with. And so if that's the case, one of the big takeaways and one reason we wanted to do have this podcast and do these kind of things is we should have some form of fellowship, right?
Some discourse for sure.
Yeah. And I know people that would say, oh, no. Orthodox people aren't, going to be in heaven one day, or Catholic people aren't going to be in heaven one day. And I mean, maybe you should hit on, didn't you have a little conversation with him about that? And maybe off air, did you have something like that?
Yeah. Father Justin and I talked a little bit, and he said a really good point. One, no one should ever say, hey, I know you're going to heaven. I know you're not, right? We're not God. We don't want to pretend to play God. Even though we're fallen man, we tend to love to be God ourselves. And hey, I think God would do this, right? But we should try not to. So Father Justin, kind of briefly what he said, his church, they pray that everyone can be saved. We didn't have enough time while I was walking him out to get to that subject, so we might have to ask him that again and get his response and respond to that. But
let me just ask you the question. Do you believe Father Justin is a Christian, someone who's going to be in heaven one day?
I can't say who's going to be in heaven, but when we go based off how are people saved, and we would say people are saved by believing in Jesus Christ by his grace, right? Having faith in him. The important question is, who is Jesus? And I would say Father Justin agrees with us on who is Jesus.
Yeah.
The Jesus of the Bible.
Yeah.
So if I'm going off of what the Bible says, how we're saved, right? Then I would say, yes, Father Justin will be there with other Orthodox Christians as well.
Yeah.
Now, would they say the same about us? I didn't get enough time to talk to him more in depth about that. The perception I got was he believes we are as well.
Right.
I don't want to that's not him speaking. That is me interpreting the short conversation we had. But yes, I would say Father Justin, the key things we seem to believe we agree on, the key things, right? How we go about worship, how we go about liturgy, that kind of thing. There's differences.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a conversation to be had, even to the point where, pastoring a church plant, a very young church in Springville, I've thought on some of those things. Is there some things that we could adopt if it's going to put? I'll be honest with you. When he was telling me what the format of preparing your heart for worship, I'm like, and we don't do.
Kirk was taking note.
Well, we don't do that, but we do emphasize the Lord's Day. So Saturday night, it's like, okay, guys, everybody's got, showers. We're going to get in bed. It's Saturday night, but it's not like Friday night, where Friday night we may stay up and watch something late or whatever, play games. Yeah. No, Saturday night, and there are exceptions to this. Sometimes we have events and stuff. For the most part, we want to make sure we're rested to be able to get up in the morning and celebrate the resurrection of Jesus Christ. So to me, even though I would say that we put an emphasis on that, maybe we don't put enough of an emphasis, and the structure of the liturgical mechanisms, right, that point us that way. What are some things that they said that they did that may be looked at? And
what can we learn from them, right?
Yeah,
iron sharpens iron.
How many times did he say we do this, but it's not legalistic?
Yeah.
He said, we don't do this, and the fact that you don't do it, that means you're sinning. Mm-hmm. But these things mean something. So we put these patterns in place because we want people to see the emphasis that we place on it. So it's Sunday night or Saturday night, we're going to not eat after a certain time. And we're going to put an emphasis on winding down, because he's exactly 100% correct that the Jewish day started in the evening. And so they Saturday night, that would be good for us to adopt some of that, to say, okay, Saturday night's coming down. I know what's going to happen tomorrow. It's a big day. I'm not going to go out and stay up to like midnight or 1 o'clock and fall in the bed and then get up and Sunday morning.
Miss church or
miss church. Or even if I get there, I mean, how many of us, and being that I'm a pastor and I teach, I can tell you there's oftentimes people don't come in the very best on Sunday morning ready to hear the word.
Yeah.
And to worship God. They're falling asleep. And that it is what it is. Our church, we want our church to be something where people come in. It's a time of prayer, time of refreshment, time of rest spiritually in Jesus. But that doesn't mean we shouldn't be trying to give our very best to doing that. So those things that he mentioned, I kind of jived with.
He said using as tools to be able to worship better and like preparing our hearts for worship like that.
Yeah,
we can agree with that. That's something I think is cool about what he said.
Yeah.
Also, another point he touched on, right, is Father Justin has a passion for simplicity in life, right? In a world where, and I'd agree with him on this, simplicity is something hard to come by. We are in such a convoluted world, such a lost world. I mean, we always have been because we're men, we're fallen, right? But especially in our modern technology age, it seems like it's so hard to find simplicity, in a sense of reverence, right? And so I think, he mentioned, and I don't know the facts on this, so who knows, right? Like I said, most statistics are made up on the spot, that the Orthodox Christian church is the fastest growing church in America, or one of the fastest, something like that. And what I think a lot of people are attracted to the Orthodox church for is there seems to be more of an emphasis placed on the reverence of things, right? Does having the ultimate reverence get us into heaven? No. But I think a lot of people are looking for simplicity in life, and they see that in the lifestyle of like the Orthodox church. Yeah. Is that a fair point to make?
Yeah, I think so. And I think we could learn something from that. I'm not saying
I'm not saying we don't have reverence.
Well, no. But I think it's something we got to fight for.
Right.
We got to keep making sure as leadership
that there's an importance placed on.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And simplicity in life. We're in such a fast-paced world where information age. It's social media. It's really crammed down our throats, and we need a slower pace. We need to be able to think deeply on stuff and not be overwhelmed with everything. So there's a lot that I think we learn from, that the Orthodox Church can teach us when it comes to that. But I mean, we could go on, and we hope that this.
We hope you got something.
Yeah,
from
these
our
3 episodes.
That's our goal.
Hopefully, it's a little entertaining, and we're not the most boring people in the world. But we hope that you've never thought about these things before, and now you've been introduced to the Orthodox Church, and at the least, maybe what it does is get you to see, and this is what I think I enjoyed about what Father Justin said was, God has a plan. God has a plan. We're all made in His image, and there's distortions of that all over the place. And we want to show a world that, no, this is what it's about. Family is important, not because of just it is, but that was God's design. He wanted family to be important, not eternal, not to be worshiped, but it is important. And to be able to have deep relationships where you really get to know each other, and you're putting that on, the church should be putting that on display so that the broken world out there who is in the midst of all of this social networking and dating online and pornographic addicted and being ravaged by the fact that they're trying to change their genders and all of this can look at it and say, well, hold on a second. This is more simplistic and wholesome, and I want to be part of that. And to me, that's the biggest desire I have for our church is like, I want the world to look on the inside and say, hold on a second, there's a mom and there's a dad and there are kids and they're not perfect, but they seem to care for one another and they seem to love each other. And here's a church family that seems to do that same thing and really want to be around each other. There's something about this God. There's something about this Jesus. We have to be quick to give all the glory to God and all the grace of God to the grace of God, right? So I think if anything, if you're listening and you're like, wow, what is it? It's about Jesus. And it's about knowing that he is the full revelation of God and he wants to have a relationship with you. And hopefully through the word and through church history, through understanding that Jesus has been building his church for over 2,000 years, you can also be part of
the church was never lost. You know what I mean?
No, it wasn't.
Gates of hell have never prevailed against Jesus' church.
And it never will. So thank you guys for being part. We're going to sign off. And man, we're rocking some awesome episodes.
We got more coming.
We got more coming.
You're going to see some more interesting guests for sure. We got a lineup that we're working on.
And so join us again next time. We may have Lana, we may have Joelle, we may have both. It's going to be hard to have both because we only have 4 microphones.
True.
And we may
sad.
have to figure something out there. But
thank you for coming on today, Lana. We appreciate it.
thanks for sponsoring the show, Lana. Woohoo!
I'm still confused.
folk.
Did we sponsor her or did she sponsor us? We need to have some discernment with our sponsorships
I
here.
have no idea.
Well, seeing that the business is like 2 days old.
Yeah.
Right.
We're actually an entrepreneurship podcast.
We're all just starting, and we've got those 4 faithful listeners that are just loving
4
it.
strong.
Right
Yep.
Anyway, share the podcast. We're on Spotify. We're on YouTube. artcity.church if you want to know more information about the church. But thanks for being here, and we look forward to seeing you next time. God bless.